No one has ever left a meeting with me wondering what I meant. When I say something, it is clear, candid, and often blunt. Am I being too subtle as my punchline when I deliver a message I consider obvious? I'll occasionally add, I can speak slower if you want, to ensure my point is received. I can seem gruff. I know that, and I can be impatient. I have an embedded sense of urgency. What I can't figure out is why so many other people don't have it. But from an early age, I realized that I had a fundamentally different perspective from my peers. I was willing to trade conformity for authenticity, even when that meant being an outlier, which it usually did, and even if it meant being on my own. In this book, I share the story of how a restless, curious boy who grew up in Chicago made it to the Forbes 400. I'll describe the risks that paid off and those that didn't, and tell you what I learned in the process. I'll take you inside my world of companies, where culture is king. That is, we take great care with the way we do things, with transparency, alignment, and trust. I'm probably best known for creating several of the largest companies in commercial real estate and for helping establish today's $1 trillion public real estate industry. But most of my investments are actually in other industries like energy, manufacturing, retail, travel, logistics, healthcare, and so on. You could say I'm an investor or an allocator of capital, but what I really am is an entrepreneur. I focus less on specific industries and more on seeing opportunity in anomalies or trends that catch my attention. I also read risk for a living. I'm very focused on understanding the downside, and I have a pretty good track record, but it's not perfect. You can't play at this level without some pretty big highs and lows. Of course, they usually don't happen within the same couple of years, but they did for me in 2007 and 2008. With our $39 billion sale of Equity Office, the company built from scratch, and the $8 billion privatization of Tribune Company, which closed at the start of the Great Recession and went into bankruptcy a year later. In real estate, I'm known as the grave dancer. That was the title of an article I wrote back in 1976, and the nickname stuck. Some might see buying and creating value from others' mistakes as a form of exploitation, but I see it as giving neglected or devalued assets in any industry new life. And often in my career, I've been the only bidder for them, the last chance for resurrection. I'm not claiming to be altruistic, just optimistic and confident that I can turn those assets around. That, in my definition, is an entrepreneur. Someone who doesn't just see the problems, but also sees the solutions, the opportunities. Not surprisingly, a fundamental part of being an entrepreneur aligns with my tendency to walk out of step with the norm. I have a saying, if everyone goes left, look right. Conventional wisdom is nothing to me but a reference point. In fact, I believe it can be a horribly debilitating concept. It often boils down to a bunch of people yelling, "Go this way." And once the crowd gets going, it can get real loud, real fast. We saw it in the stampede of commercial real estate development in the 70s and 80s, the dot-com craze of the 90s, and the subprime mortgage mania of the 2000s. I make a point of shutting out the noise, doing what makes sense to me. I want everyone's opinion because there is tremendous value in being a good listener. But then I determine my own path. I look for clarity, and if something's not clear, I get more information. That could mean reading various sources of news, understanding new legislation, or meeting with someone halfway across the world. The point is, I don't make assumptions, but determining my position is the easy part. Once I have formed my opinion, I have to trust my perspective enough to act on it. That means putting my own money behind it. My level of commitment is usually high, and I have to stay with my decision, even when everyone else is telling me I'm wrong, which happens a lot. If I had a nickel for every time I heard, "Sam, you just don't understand," I'd be rich. I believe the fundamentals of business: supply and demand, liquidity equals value, good corporate governance, and reliable partners, to name a few, apply across the board. They inform my decision-making, or what I do, just like my philosophies guide how I do it. I run my company as a meritocracy with a moral compass. And for those who raise their eyebrows at that statement, who think you can't get to the top unless you beat the crap out of everybody, you're wrong.